The question is Ole Miss okay? Are the Rebels and Lane Kiffin, is it the same story every year where they stump their own toe and they fall short of what we in the media and we in the podcast world and the professional media world where we label them as? I thought this was a team that could make it to Atlanta. I still believe that. I thought it was a team that could finish in the top four of the country. I still believe that. I'm not going to make some rash judgment off of one game because I will tell you this too. Kentucky has a great defense. That's a really, really good group. Jamon Dumas Johnson has helped them, excuse me, has helped them immensely in the middle of the defense. Deion Walker is an All American candidate. And for 60 minutes on Saturday, Kentucky played what I believe was well above what they needed to do. The defense controlled the line of scrimmage, and Ole Miss, who really had not been tested in just in terms of the competition level, we saw the competition level jump up for the Rebels, and they struggled. And so Kentucky looks good. They've got some things to figure out offensively here. I like this is, but this I like what they can do. Brock Vandegrift, we'll see how he develops throughout the season. But this is a Mark Stoops type of game. Am I right? Like this is a game where Mark Stoops comes in and he's just salivating because he knows when he sees this final box score, he sees how the game is played, and maybe Mark Stoops ish in terms of way went for it and got aggressive. That's when you're able to sit there and say, okay, this is what Kentucky can be. Now, on the flip side, does this mean that Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, they're frauds? What? No, I'm not going to overreact to 1 week. I'm just telling you that you have, like I said, you have to individually look at things. You cannot just, we can gather data points and we may believe something that we think something we believe to be true, but in all cases, it might not be true. And so is Ole Miss offensively, as bad as they played on Saturday? No, this is still one of the higher, more potent offenses in the country. And look, they're going to visit Columbia this upcoming weekend. I'm going to have eyes on that one because the very next week, you talk about what we didn't think would be a gauntlet, could be one for Ole Miss. You play at home against Kentucky. You've lost that one. Now you go to Columbia, South Carolina, which outside of that fan base in Columbia, no one really had a firm idea of what they might be. And now defensively, we know that they're a pretty stout group. They've got some things to figure out offensively. We'll have to see, what they look like, and just in terms of Lenore Sellers being the quarterback, that's going to be a hostile environment. Can their tackles handle Kyle Kennard on one side and the other young man on the other side? His name escapes me, Dylan Stewart. I mean, that's legitimate NFL talent on both sides of the defensive line. So that's going to be something that's going to be another test. And is it a bounce back game? I don't know what the line on that game early wise is, but is that a bounce back game for Ole Miss on the road? Because then the very next week you have to come and play LSU, which regardless of what your opinion of LSU has been, and I've watched them in person almost all season, coming down to Death Valley is a whole different animal. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting. I think, going to be interesting to see. Alex says Kentucky did the same thing they did to Georgia, but Ole Miss isn't the level to win that kind of game, unlike Georgia. Essentially, Alex, what you're saying here is you think Georgia is a tier above Ole Miss, and that's a fair point. Ole Miss isn't as battle tested in terms of their head coach being able to go through situations like this and be on the winning end. I will equate it to a team we'll talk about later in the show. If you're going to be a championship contender, you're going to have ugly games. Every single year, we have seen the national title contender, the national title winner, the four teams in the playoff have to go through some slog of a game where it's not pretty, but they leave with a win. Ole Miss failed that test on Saturday. If they fail it again, they may not get another chance, but they failed that test on Saturday.